go and squeal at the 14-year-old technical expert and say, Thomas.
Gotcha.
I gave him my laptop and he just went boop, 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 and gave it back to me and it worked. And I'm like, well, what did you do? He's like, I don't really know. I just did what I always do. And I'm like, that's not helpful for someone who has no idea how to fix these problems. But anyway, it's working.
That's good. That's really good news. Where are you in Vermont, Judith?
Stockbridge, Vermont. It's about 25 minutes from Killington.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think I told you, but we're renting a house in Moortown, Vermont for a month.
Oh, nice.
Third week in July until the third week in August. So
Yeah, it's been hot up here the last day or so, but there was a huge thunderstorm tonight and it broke. So it's going to be a lot cooler in the next couple of days.
Julie's in the attendees if she could be promoted over. Oh, and there's Gina.
Judith, by the way, I believe Stockbridge is the setting for a famous stage play called Our Town.
Oh, really?
Oh, I remember Our Town. A lot of schools did that play. Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, a lot of schools have done it. I did that when I was in high school in that sort of thing.
So
When,
what? Yeah, that's about right.
not to stop the chatter, but we can
Sorry.
start our meeting
We're
now.
in session.
That's good.
And I think Kat was right. I read instructions for the virtual meetings, and you don't need to read the preamble, but we do need to prove quorum. So I'll read your name and you can, for a roll call vote for quorum. Savidovich,
Here.
Signs,
Here.
McKee,
Here.
Stivers,
Here,
Watson,
Here.
Glazemitsky,
mute.
You're on mute, Gina.
Here.
thank you, Connolly,
Here.
Markalier,
Here.
and Warren.
Here.
Very good. So we can,
And Martin is here now.
oh, and Martin. So we can get started. Anything new on goals or recommendations or comments on goals or recommendations?
I can provide my delinquent chapter report.
You got to
And
that.
what is that, Sam?
It's a repeat, sadly. However, I have been
Want to
working
get
on
it
it.
over with as quickly as possible.
Judith is my witness. I sent her my very rough draft to prove that I actually have been doing things on it with all the red ink in it. So I'm making progress, closing in on it, I think, but I still have some few things to do. So apologies again, but I am actually making an effort to get that over the finish line.
Very good. I missed the last couple of meetings, but did Kristen give an update in terms of the rec department? I know she's not here tonight, but she sent me updates and I incorporated that into our chapter.
She was here last week, I think, or
Yeah,
the
last
time
time she
before.
said that.
I had recommended to her, I don't know if she was able to, that she should update you all on what the rec department had decided. So hopefully she did that. Yeah, she said she would.
So, Karen, the version that you had shared from your Google Drive, I think you'd sent me a link to it. Is that still the latest version?
I sent the latest version to you and Mimi probably 2, maybe 3 weeks ago by email. Yeah, because I just wanted to, I didn't upload it to the Google Drive because I get a little confused by what
No, I put it into the folder that we're using for the draft.
Yeah. So the changes in that version that I sent was the incorporation of the rec department, and then also the incorporation of some of the key accomplishments of open space and the rec department since 2008, and trails, and that reflects everything that you and I talked about, Catherine, as well. And it doesn't include any of the updated charts that we requested, which I'm assuming just aren't done now.
Okay.
Hey, Mimi,
Yes.
I do have a question for Katura. Um, in my chapter on facilities, I have a placeholder for a little discussion about the school research subcommittee that's working now. And Katura, my question is, do you think that is actually still fairly sensitive, that we should not put too much in there, given we are still pretty far down in the early stages of that? On the other hand, it's going to be, I'm sure, a number of months before this document gets published, so we've got time to make modifications. But it seems to me that's an important concept to socialize, particularly if it looks like that is actually going to move forward in some way. So I'm reluctant to leave it out, because it is a big deal if we actually do decide to do something in that direction. On the other hand, I don't want to get out in front of ourselves with that issue if that was something you think would be particularly sensitive for folks.
Well, I would put it this way. I think at this point, the direction that things are going to go in is very much up in the air, because we have the MSBA statement of interest in. We won't hear about that for a few months. And there are a couple of other moving parts as far as figuring out where things are going to go, as far as, projected school enrollment, analysis of the current buildings, all of that kind of thing. So it is a work in progress. I think I would agree with you, Sam, that it would make sense to leave a placeholder in that maybe I don't know what is in there now. I could go look probably if it's on the drive, but leave a placeholder in.
There isn't. I'm not done yet with my very late chapter, so there's nothing out there now. I'm just still trying to put the pieces together so I can put in whatever you think makes sense there, and maybe placeholder is the way to go for now.
Yeah, I think a placeholder. We put out a letter to the community a few weeks ago, and maybe a little bit from that just reiterates some of the actions that we're taking and that we expect to take, and then we can just update that as we go along. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
I mean, I think that's what we're going to end up, doing in a couple of places. So, I know Steve Achilles has got his survey out there. I know there's a technology survey. I mean, if we'll never get this report out if we kind of wait for all the things that are in flight. But I think just having a placeholder to say, at the time of publication, the fire survey was, under review or whatever, then at least when we come back in, whether it's 6 months or a year's time, and say, okay, well, where are we against the plan, goals and recommendations, we can take the opportunity to, maybe add an addendum and say, well, here's the status of the things that, the important things that have been worked on since then.
And Judith, I've done something similar with the federal stimulus funding stuff and the chapter that I'm working on, because that's a huge deal. We don't know all the details for that, but we do know that there's going to be money out there for a variety of things. And so I've got some language currently that talks about the opportunity and the need to plan and prioritize and think about projects that are potentially larger than we could afford under normal circumstances. And again, do whatever we need to do to take advantage of that opportunity. So a very general language, but to recognize that that's out there and could have a significant impact on important progress that we can make over the next 5 or so years here.
I have a question for the group. I'm very close to having a draft done, but looking at, the 2008 master plan and kind of updating certain items, I'm just curious as to how others are handling, and I can go in the folder and look at this too, but if there was a consensus on how we're dealing with, to the extent there are goals and objectives from 2008, are we kind of going over what we've done from there, rehashing, or just sort of almost starting fresh and saying, here's our goals now?
I haven't addressed many of the specific goals from 2008. I've got a piece in mind. I think others have some of this as well in terms of progress that we've made since 2008. So I have a bulleted list of what I think are significant things that have happened since 2008, a number of which are on the goals from 2008, but I haven't gone through a blow by blow kind of version of it. And then, Julie, I'm skinnying down substantially in terms of what I think is descriptive filler kind of stuff from 2008, because if somebody's interested in that history, the history before 2008 is not going to change at this point. So if somebody wants to read about it, they can. And so I'm focusing on important stuff. Like for me, the public safety complex is a big deal. That was an important goal from 2008. That's now done. So some language about that, talking about how that fits in the grand scheme of things is good, but I'm trying not to repeat a lot of the boilerplate stuff unless it's useful, needs updating. For example, the town's financial situation had some good exhibits relative to other towns in there. I think it's worth updating that kind of stuff to provide context for how we compare to other towns in selected areas. But I think from what I've seen, most of the chapters are far skinnier than last time around. And so I think we maybe need some language in the front end of this draft to point out that if anybody wants background or context, go look at the 2008 plan. And then this focus is more on things that have happened since 2008 and looking forward over the next 10 years kind of language. So I think that's where my sense is that we're headed. But,
and that's definitely what I've done on my 2 chapters. I've got the section on, I think we just ended up saying we call it accomplishments since 2008, because we wanted to make sure that it wasn't like a line by line, we've done this one, we haven't done this one. But, what are the big items that we feel we've accomplished? And that might be things that weren't even included in the original report, that they just, because life happened in the last 10 12 years. What there is in it's a while since we've looked at it, but the original, I think it was called the vision section that MAPC did, actually had, they just cut and paste it from a document I created, which said, of all the goals and recommendations, here's how many, the 107 that we had, here's the ones that have been achieved. Here's the ones that we, were deemed not to be, relevant at the time they were looked at. And I'm just going to go back and look at that, because we did revisit those implementation recommendations a while ago, and there has been more progress than there was when we first looked at that in 2019, I guess. And I guess the only other thing I'd say, Julie, is that if there's anything that when you look at those original 2008 recommendations, if there's anything you think is important that wasn't carried over, I think it's very appropriate to carry it over and put it in the 2020 plan.
Did we have a tenet, like an outline for each of the chapters something Karen had proposed that was a really good idea that we carry through for each of the sections? Did we circulate that? Because that sounds like that might be helpful for Julie, because I think we talked about highlighting of the accomplishments in part of the intro or just after the intro of each of the sections. Do we have a template?
We do.
Yeah.
Let's have a look.
Jules, would you circulate that again? I'm a little confused.
Yes.
I think I saw 2 different versions of that, so I was never.
There was an original one that I did, and then Karen and Kat kind of reframed it, and I think we said that was the better one. Yeah, I can. I will send that out to everybody. As a reminder.
Karen, you're on mute. But your
that.
statement was very
Essentially, what we
eloquent.
did is follow the template that Judith had originally given, but kind of built on that to be able to, have the introduction and then, go into some of the key accomplishments since 2008. So we didn't necessarily go line by line with all the goals from 2008, but we basically said, here's what we've gotten done since then in this particular area. And then here's some of the key organizations that have contributed to that. And so, Kat added to that and Kristen added to that. And then here's our goals for the updated master plan. And what we tried to do is use the goals for the updated master plan as a kind of filter. So anything that didn't relate to our current goals in the old chapter, we just got rid of it because the old chapters were super long and they had, I think, everything but the kitchen sink in there. And it made it, in my opinion, less useful.
Your consultants were being paid by the pound.
Yeah.
All right, I know that Judith, Julie, and Sarah have had discussions on the editing process and how that's going to happen.
Yes, I can share that. Just give me 1 minute. Oh, I find that. Okay, just let me. Okay. I just updated that. Hang on a minute.
And I received updated data sets and tables from Community Opportunities Group as of late yesterday. So I'm excited to be sharing those in a little bit.
And we're on track for the MAPC guys or whoever for the next batch in July sometime.
Yeah, so I think, when we're obviously wrapping up the fiscal year. So after that, I think, we should definitely reassess, either going back to MAPC, they do owe us some kind of revisional work just from before. So, maybe we could take that draft back to them to have a look in terms of the updated data sets. Either they could do it or we could continue to work with Community Opportunities Group to get the other data sets. So either way.
I've been disappointed in MAPC. Maybe we stay with COG.
Yeah.
doing a good
Yeah,
job.
I like COG a lot. I really do. I think that they're very competent and, they turn
Think
around.
Yeah.
Yeah, they turn around a
That's
good.
what I've seen, definitely.
Yeah,
But I thought what we said we wanted to go back to MAPC to do is to actually create the published report for us. So we'll create the content and they'll do
Right.
their desktop publishing, whatever they do.
To
Because,
fancy it up.
yeah, to put it together. Because that's, I think that would be a very good use of our remainder monies.
Sure. And they're still updating those charts we requested as well, correct?
No, that's what, so Sarah will show what we've got so far. So they had no capacity count to do any of what we wanted. So we put it out to the COG group and they're working on, or they've done the first batch of it and they're coming.
Yep.
I've got a lot to do.
What does COG stand for?
Community
Opportunity-
Community
Opportunities
Opportunities Group.
Is it
Got an S on the end of it, though. I don't know what that is, does it?
It's a
COGS.
company.
Yes, yes.
is it a consulting firm that works
It's a
with
cons-
municipalities in the same way MAPC does?
Yes. Yes, they're a nonprofit organization in Boston who, again, just does consulting work kind of across the
Did the
state.
housing production plan, yeah?
They did the housing production plan here, yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank
They
you.
worked on the infamous zoning advisory committee 15 years ago, 20 years ago now.
Oh, there you go. So long-standing reputation then.
That didn't turn out so well, but
COG worked on the Zach.
Yeah, Judy Barrett worked for COGS when she was working on that.
Ah,
So long history.
Okay, so can everyone see what I've just put up? I'll make it bigger.
Yes.
Is that all right, Tom?
I can't
see it yet
see
either.
You can't see it?
I can go like this.
I can't read it.
What do you mean you can't read?
All
That
I
is small.
see
all I see is a menu.
is a menu like of option, like your
See all your folders, Julia?
Yeah,
I think this is age discrimination, Judith.
I know it is.
Oh, there we go.
Is that brown?
Yeah.
That's good.
Much better.
That is very good. Thank you.
You guys kill me. Okay, so if you remember, Julie, Sarah, and I have volunteered to do the glorious task of editing the chapters. So basically bring it all together. And we've had some kind of exchanges, and this is where we've landed in terms of what we're going to do. So it's a kind of a three-way approach. And we created 3 categories that include the kind of the key tasks that need to be done, and each of us has kind of taken on one of them. So the first area is what I called the gap analysis. So you can see there what we're going to look at. So a quick check back into 2008 to make sure that there's nothing kind of obvious that we've missed. I think B is probably the most important one, which is making sure that there's a really strong narrative to link to each goal and recommendation, because that was definitely something that was pretty weak in the 2008 report. There was all of this stuff, and then over here, there were some goals and recommendations, and you had to kind of go, how did you get from here to here? So I think that's going to be a really important aspect of this report. And then the final piece is to make sure that we've got the key messages that came out of the vision forum and the survey. That was our kind of community engagement. So I think being able to really emphasize that will help bring, to give it weight. And I think I kind of volunteered for this piece because I've kind of been here since day one. And, because of the work I did earlier in the end of last year and the goals and recommendations and looking at 2008, it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's in the forefront of my mind, but it's definitely in my memory banks, what's in where. So Julie has volunteered to do what we've called narrative flow and duplication. So that's, whereas what I'm doing is looking at it chapter by chapter, what Julie's going to be doing is looking across the totality of all of the chapters and looking to see where there's duplication between sections or items in chapters, and then recommending where information should sit. And again, what we saw in 2008 was there was a fair amount of repetition, which I think made it quite confusing, certainly when you went to look at the implementation and kept seeing some of the same recommendations there. And I think this is just re-emphasizing what we said before. What we're going to try and do is make sure a goal and recommendation is really only in one chapter, except for zoning, where we've said we're going to kind of lift those into the land use chapter, because then there's a kind of a nice kind of circular loop there. The next piece on that is trying to get a consistent style and format, which is never going to be perfect, but at least we can standardize the basics like the fonts and the headings and the bullets. And then because there's we're doing this kind of top-down approach, it should enable Julie to pull out kind of key themes and messages, because we are going to have to write the executive summary at some point. And then Sarah is our data queen, and this is already underway. So she's coordinating with COG to do the charts and the data sets prepared externally. And she's going to work on preparing internal data for charts and maps, because she's obviously well positioned because she's got all of her contacts back in the townhouse now. So, for example, I know she's already started talking to Melissa Danza about open space and those kind of areas. So I think probably the chapter that's got the most internal pieces is yours, Sam. So, once you're ready, you will go with your internal data. And then I think, again, the other important piece is to make sure that we've got the sourcing and the referencing watertight, so that if anyone does then question it, we know exactly where it's come from. So that's what.
That's great, Judith. I'm actually struggling with number 2, because depending on how you define infrastructure, it could include a lot of things that are in other chapters. So I'm sort of putting notes and placeholders in, and I think that Julie will have an important function there to determine, what goes in which bucket, basically. And it could belong in a variety of places. And I don't actually care where it goes as long as we've got it appropriately represented somewhere.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
that's going to be, I think, a very helpful step in the process.
So my goal is to try and get the gap analysis work done before the next meeting, which should be doable as I'm not going anywhere. Travel plans again, but
Oops.
it is what it is. Anyone got any questions?
Thank you.
I got a higher level question, I guess. I think all this is great, and I think be helpful in terms of driving us toward the finish line here. One of the things that I think is interesting is that folks may have seen that the Board of Selectmen sent out, I guess this past week, a note to the various department heads, and I don't know how broadly it was distributed. It basically recognized that the opportunity for the federal funding is upon us here, and was soliciting ideas for projects. And it seems to me that we have an opportunity at some point, and it's not urgent like next week, but opportunity to take these things, and we've talked about prioritizing objectives out of the work here. But if we at some point can have, I think, a very interesting conversation to say, okay, let's look at the objectives and recommendations for things that need to be done. Can we prioritize those in some way to be aligned with whatever the funding opportunities are, which to me really is a major boost to get things done. I'd almost rather do something that might not be priority number one, but we could actually get federal funding to do, versus something that would be, my first choice to do, but there's no chance that we're ever going to get any money to be able to do it. So you got to mix and match the value and the opportunity to actually make progress. And I think that'd be a great conversation for this group to have, to see if we can reach some sort of a consensus about, here are the top 6 things that we want to throw in on the table and for consideration as the town looks for how we're going to allocate those funds going forward.
Sam,
I agree.
I think that's a great idea. And that's really interesting because I was working on this yesterday, and I actually added a section to my section that I haven't gotten a lot of detail of it yet, but it's sort of in my outline for funding and how, certain initiatives or goals would be funded. And I was thinking of that because I know that there's money available aside from the specific money that's, potentially available now as part of the rescue plan. There's also ongoing programs and incentives that are available, through state and federal government. And I was sort of thinking in light of my section, but I agree. I think it almost makes more sense to have it global. And, kind of as a resource list of what's available. And you're right, helping to also prioritize what actually can be done, that's with the funding that's available. I like that idea a lot. I think that's a great way in helping to find a roadmap to executing the goals that we're putting together.
And I think that it might be interesting to turn this around a little bit. I'm going to be very interested to see what people send in response to that request. And it might be a useful thing for us to take a look at that list that is compiled to say, are there things that are coming back from the departments that maybe we've missed somehow in terms of this process, and we want to actually get somewhere in the document. So it's sort of a cross check, if you will. Not clear that that's going to, show up a lot of incredible things that we never thought of. On the other hand, that's a good reference point, I think, to get some feedback in terms of what the various departments are thinking as far as capital investment opportunities or funding use of funds. So Judith, Mimi, I don't know, maybe thinking about scheduling a meeting for that discussion, maybe August or something. I don't know what kind of timing would work, but when we get a little clearer look at what the document looks like, and be able to say, how do we put some of this stuff together?
Yeah, because we've talked all along about, wanting to make sure that we're coming up with a kind of a set of priorities as well, so that, when we launch the plan and say, okay, here's the groups that are going to, boards and commissions that are going to be responsible for taking it forward, that we've already made some strong recommendations around, what are the most important things that we would consider that people should be working on. I think it's a good way to kind of frame it to, it gives some context to that prioritization process.
But Sam, I'm somewhat concerned that if we in fact allow the departments to come back and identify our priorities for us, I know I'm exaggerating our position here, but if that happens, it doesn't provide us with that forward-looking thing that we really want for the 5, 7, 10-year kind of forward view of where the city should go. In other words, I think we'll see a lot of immediate kind of things, important that although they may be, but there'll be immediate type of things that aren't forward-looking enough.
And Bill, I do agree with you, and I wasn't suggesting that somehow that drives our process, except as a checkpoint to say, is there something there that we look at and say, wow, we should have thought about that, and we ought to include it. My expectation is exactly like yours, is that focus is going to be shorter term, and we may not learn a whole lot, but I think that's again a data point that I'm usually interested in looking around at the data and seeing if there's something I've missed. So, but I do agree that it's not. I don't think it's going to drive our process.
Yeah, I knew that's what you meant, but I just felt compelled to say it.
Thank you. Yes, I should have articulated that.
So this looks great. And I thank you, Judith, Julie, and Sarah.
I'm actually got my 2 screens going here, and I'm just trying to look at your list, Judith, and look at my chapter and see if it has what you have for your editing. Some of it is there and some of it isn't. So it's good. It's very clear.
So it sounds like you guys have this all under control and we don't need to like form subcommittees or.
No, I don't think so. I mean,
No subcommittees.
Yeah, and we shouldn't for open meeting law purposes. So we got a point person for each one of these things, and they can reach out for support to anyone they need along the way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They're
Don't
workable.
forget, we actually volunteered for this, so no, I mean, I'm serious, because that was an important aspect of because we volunteered. There's like that is.
Judith, I thought you were in it for the money. Wait a minute. Hold on.
Yeah, there's a significant reduction in cost due to the volunteer.
Yeah.
And the dedication.
That was well said, Sarah. I was looking to find the words. Yes. The occasional beer wouldn't be
Right.
Well, we did have a breakfast.
breakfast, Joyce. Thank
Well,
you.
we can do beers now together. So, maybe that's how we get through the editing process.
That's right.
Big conference room and a 6-pack. I don't know. That sounds reasonable.
Not on town property.
No, definitely not.
Big trouble.
Well, our clubhouse is open again, so
There you go.
There you go.
yeah, we can. And we have a whole fridge full of beer and wine.
But you're not there now, right?
Well, not now, but I'm only here. I'm only in Vermont for a week.
Oh,
go.
okay.
So you have a full refrigerator full here and you're gonna be back in a week?
Is there an open window?
No.
So I'm happy to share data stuff if everybody wants to see.
Perfect.
Stuff. Here we go. Can everybody see my screen?
Mhm.
Okay. So it's my second screen, so I won't be looking at everybody while I'm talking. So here on the right-hand side of my screen, is it backwards? In any case, this document is the document that I sent out to COG and the other, I solicited different people. In any case, so that's on this side. This was sent to COG, and then this is what COG came up with on the left-hand side. So, it's a one-for-one match. This small table that I sent to everyone and everyone filled out with their information, and thank you for doing that. These are the tables that we're going by. So table 5-3 is going to be me primarily. So that's a lot of internal information about development since 2008. So I'm going to try to pull that together from the information that we have here in the townhouse. 5-4 is all set. So this is open space acquired since 2008. Roberta was able to get this through the assessor's database and the open space recreation plan. So this is already, complete. So it just needs to be added into the document. 5-5, the public access in terms of restrictions at the Sudbury Reservoir. So updating that with the 2010 DCR plan.
Can you scroll back up for just a minute?
Oh,
Sarah?
sure.
So I'm curious about the prohibited activities, hunting and trapping. That's actually no longer true because they opened that up to hunting. So am I missing something?
So
All year long.
I can check that, again, this is data that COG came up with. So the reference is this 2008 public access plan. So if there's a newer plan that perhaps she couldn't find, or if there was some update to that plan, I'm not aware of it, but I'm happy to make a note here and double check.
Yeah, well, they opened it up 2 years ago for hunting. I don't know about trapping specifically, but definitely hunting.
Bow hunting, I know, was opened up on some of the trails that I walk on. Yeah.
It's both. Bow and what is it called? Firearm.
That might be worth a footnote kind of thing, because I think if you say hunting, that has a connotation of, hunting all the time kind of stuff. And I think it's limited seasons
Yes.
and very
Well,
limited.
hunting
areas.
is in seasons, you're right. And so I think it's between October and December. So I would
Yeah.
be that specific with it.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
footnote, and it's also limited areas too. There
Yep.
are excluded areas, as I recall. So
That's correct. Yep.
I think worth a little explanation to avoid misunderstanding on that.
We could even hyperlink to DCR's hunting page where that information is updated and
That's
people can
interesting.
cross-link to it.
So I shouldn't wear my antlers when I go walking through there.
No.
In terms of a reference to hyperlink, I think that that's a great opportunity to kind of keep at least the digital document, like a living document. As earlier we were talking about some of these new studies and reports coming out locally, we could add those hyperlinks in sort of after the fact, which wouldn't change, the context of the document significantly, but it would have that, latest and greatest information.
And maybe even,
So-
Sarah, use footnotes kind of things. In some documents I've seen you footnote piece
Where
of
the
data
link
or whatever,
is.
and then you've got a glossary of footnotes with the link actually in
Sure.
it, so people can navigate there. And so you simply change the glossary entry if you want to update the link.
So this is 5-6 recreation facilities. So that's all complete. And again, from the open space plan 2019 and the assessor's database. So pretty accurate information. And this is another one that I'm going to have to look into. So I'm going to kind of take a a crack at looking into, some of the town-owned and non-town-owned, parcels. Then we get into, it's a little out of order here because we're skipping the public resiliency, but circulation and transportation over here. So 7.1 and 7.2 are kind of side by side from the census on the map from 2018. Means of commuting to work. Traffic growth on selected roadways in Southborough. So 7.4. Then we get into commercial diversity. So 4.1, where residents work. Unemployment rate. Changes in Southborough employment base. So what industries folks are actually in terms of their employment. The Metro West employment change. And so Metro West is a very interesting, area. It's defined different ways in different data sets. So we did our best to really include, all of the Metro West area kind of considered towns as well as abutting towns, because sometimes given whatever organization is pulling the data, it draws the boundary lines and it actually cuts out some of Southborough's direct neighbors. I worked with Roberta to make sure that all those were on the list here in these.
Interesting that our wage is so much higher than some of the surrounding towns.
Yes, it is. It's interesting.
Us and Hopkinton, yeah.
It's also increased substantially.
Yeah.
I could offer an interesting piece of data about Southborough's income, average income. It turns out that there are some accounting firms in Southborough that handle the financial reporting for some very wealthy people around the Metro West area. And those tax returns are filed with a Southborough address. So if you got somebody who has, a multi-million-dollar income, that creates an interesting boost to the average income in the town. So there are some data anomalies that drive some of those numbers that are crazy in terms of the reporting kind of thing, I've been told. I have access to that data myself, but it just shows that you can't always believe the numbers, but it looks like we're very affluent, certainly.
So the next one is the origin of workers in Southborough. So in terms of the people who work in Southborough, where do they live? Composition of property tax levy. Taxes in the Metro West area. So kind of looking, at the commercial rate for the surrounding towns and assessing the residential rate as well for the surrounding towns. The assessed value by class. Comparative tax burden. So, definitely something that people will be interested in. Potential retail opportunities. Then we get into housing. We were able to update a few of the tables from the HPP, which is actually, obviously very new itself. So it's exciting to, kind of see the trends in sort of a real-time snapshot. We do anticipate the release of the 2020 census data. And depending on the timing of the publishing of this and when that comes out, I think when we work, with the consultant next time, kind of see, is it feasible to squeeze in the 2020 data in terms of the timing of that release. Median home sale price. So then we get into the land use and zoning. So current land use based on the 2021 information from the assessor.
Some really great data. Thank you.
Yeah. Area by zoning district, which is interesting. So we calculated.
This is good. This is good.
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to
so-
make it real good.
Yeah, I think that we have really quality data sets this time around. And so I think where the 2008 master plan had a lot of quantity in terms of data, it really did have a robust kind of informational gathering. I think that these data sets really speak to the core of, the message that this document is trying to send. So this is potential build outs in the districts, just based on current parameters in terms of the zoning. She provided a map for the historical and cultural, which I can pull up. It's just in a different folder. So I'm just gonna stop sharing for a second. So I can put this up on the Google Drive. I just haven't had an opportunity yet, and everybody can kind of take a look for themselves. And I'll obviously continue to work on this for completing the data sets that are really closer in-house. She also additionally provided all the raw data, which is really great, so there's some really cool graphs and stuff that we might want to just incorporate in general, even though they may not be like, wholly Southborough specific, but, just in general kind of regional graphs that might make sense. I'm going to go through that in more detail and have more of a report next time.
Or maybe we have an appendix for regional context or something like that that could
Absolutely.
show some of those things. I think that could be interesting.
Sure.
Sarah, excellent work. That's so.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank
Great.
you. Yeah.
Great data.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Credit, again, the Roberta has been wonderful to work with. So.
Yeah, my sense was, Sarah, last time they just sort of did a high level flyby and picked up stuff from state and other kind of data sources.
Yeah.
And they did some research locally with people, some
Right.
of the data, but it really, it was sort of the generic snatch and grab data wherever you can kind of thing and put it into a graph. But I think this, it seems to me, be much more pointed at things we care about.
Yes,
And I think it'll be much more interesting and useful. So thank you.
I agree. Thanks.
So great.
Wow, I'm hearing all kinds of crazy noises outside my window and flashes and rain.
Yeah.
Same
There's
here.
a large cell, thunder cell approaching us from the west here. So
Eek. I think I left windows open. Oh, well, never mind.
So anything else on the editing process or?
I went in and looked at the chapter that I had sent you guys by email on the Google Drive, and the formatting is like even more screwed up than it was when I sent it to you by email. But it sounds like the consultant is going to do the formatting, Judith. Is that right?
Well, I think we'll end up doing some formatting just to get it, broadly consistent. But yeah, I mean, what I want, what I think we should be pushing for is MAPC to create a desktop published version of the report.
Nice. Good. So I'm thinking, based on what Sarah just showed, that once you upload that, Sarah, what I'm thinking the process would be to take the charts and the data that relate to our chapters and swap the new data out from the old data, and then re-upload or resend you the chapter with the new data. Does that sound like what everybody needs to do next?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that would make sense, because I think that the new data might, spark more kind of thought as to the context in some of the narrative too, so it might be an opportunity to kind of look at the chapter with fresh eyes in that way.
What about pictures? So should we be thinking of
Yeah, I did.
adding pictures to the,
I went through some of the old PowerPoints that we've done in open space, and I copied some pictures into the chapter. There probably I could do more, but I put in like 6 or 7 pictures. I think pictures are good.
Yeah, lots of pictures. Love pictures.
Yeah.
Kat has some great trail pictures that I've seen. so I'm
Yeah.
gonna filter.
Yeah. So Kat, look at the chapter, and I just copied some stuff from some of Freddie's PowerPoints, but I'm sure you have some other fabulous pictures that you could just copy and paste into the chapter.
Yeah, I'm happy to take a look, but I bet this entire group has a ton of pictures for all of
Yeah.
them.
You know, it also might be an interesting thing to have to look for pictures with actual residents
Yes.
in them. So you get a document that people can look through. Hey, there I am hiking on the trail, or
And none of mine
in
had
front of whatever.
Yeah.
bees and flowers. So
The only thing I just kind of a small warning on that is that you have to get people's permission if
A
you
release.
Not if they're in a public,
Can you,
not if they're in a public space, you don't.
so all of my pictures that have like people, well, the people that some of them have photo releases, but I have a question about that, Judith. Can you take a picture of their back
Yes.
without a photo release? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got some of those.
Updated our AMC website, and that's what I've done. Either their backs or they're so far away, you'd kind of go, I'm not even sure if that's a he or a she, but
You just Photoshop a fuzzy blob over their faces.
oh, that would be
you've been
lovely.
watching the Daily Mail online, have you?
You only have to get their permission if they're doing something illegal while you're taking a picture.
I don't know, at town meeting, they never asked me my permission for my Zoom picture.
Oh, yeah, that is true.
yeah.
We all got like snapped in some format that was like,
Yeah.
Really?
yeah, on the back of the, where was that, Tom?
It's
That
on
was-
the front. It's on the
On the annual report.
Yeah.
I thought that was so cute.
I loved it too, but
Yes,
you're right about the permission thing. But,
But those were all public meetings though.
oh, that's
yeah.
true, but I
It
guess-
is cute, but it was interesting to see.
We're getting a great lightning show out of Katura's window there. I see the lightning flash behind her.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
better than fireworks.
I know it's getting closer and
I'm
closer.
facing the window, and I can just see it going. Really, quite something.
Victoria, what part of town you live in?
Deerfoot, over near Neary and Trotter, that area.
Katura, what number Deerfoot? Because I'm on Deerfoot too.
No way, 75.
22. We're neighbors.
Oh, great.
Neighbors.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Of course, I think we're all
Back
almost
up to the
neighbors.
Trotter track and baseball field.
Yeah, we go over there all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, cool. Stop by.
It's raining
so
now.
funny, definitely. Yeah, you probably see me walking my unruly puppy. So
Yeah. Well, I have a 12-year-old golden who'd be happy to play with your unruly puppy.
oh, that'd be nice.
It is now raining out.
Yes, big time. Hey, Mimi, I have an unrelated question. I don't know where you are on the agenda, but
Go ahead, Sam.
I don't want to interrupt the flow here. At last week's selectmen's meeting, the topic of the master plan came up, and I had a request to raise a question for the group from Mr. Healy. He was asking, where does the master plan committee sit relative to the downtown zoning initiative? And my answer was that the master plan has a variety of considerations and focus on sense of community kind of thing, which includes downtown zoning, as well as business vitality and so forth. So I think that we certainly are, including the possibility that can enhance the goals that we're focusing on here, but that we have not taken a position on that particular issue. And he asked, why not? And I said, not clear that that's something that's in our purview, but he said, well, would you raise it with the group? I said, I will certainly pass it along to the group. So I don't know if there's interest or appetite to take a position on that, but I offered to raise it, and there it is.
So I watched that meeting, and the downtown initiative is one of our goals, revitalizing the downtown.
Right.
But the charge of this committee is to review and update the master plan, not to move forward any projects, and isn't the purview of this committee. And it seemed that Mr. Healy was a little upset that this committee wasn't vocal in pushing for or advocating for the zoning that will be coming before the planning board for a public hearing. But that's just not the charge of this committee.
I agree with you, Mimi.
Mimi, I think it's really important that we don't, one, because we're a collection of individuals, and if we have our individual opinions, there as the public forums are there to allow us to voice those. Plus, we represent other boards and commissions. That's how we were voted into the committee, via our boards and commissions. So, if the Conservation Commission wants to take a position on the downtown initiative, then that's where I would expect my comments to be taken.
Right.
And yeah, I didn't want to get into a debate about it. And my other concern is that we have no authority, this group, to actually do anything specifically relative to any of these things. We could make recommendations, and we'll certainly try to communicate priorities, et cetera. And hopefully they will be things that are representative of the committees that we come from, and get some traction in terms of being able to get a variety of things done going forward. But I personally am not enthusiastic about taking positions on any of these issues as this committee, just for the reasons that both Mimi and Judith just raised.
Correct.
Sam, would you agree that, in fact, what we're doing or what we're talking about is broader than just the downtown in terms of trying to establish concepts of community and, and civic centers, things of that nature?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it could incorporate, if they're talking about physical structures, it could incorporate everything from the senior center all the way up through downtown and beyond.
Sure, absolutely.
Right.
And again, as I said to Marty, I think that what we're doing is very much aligned with what's going on in the downtown area, but we're doing a lot of other things as well. Thanks for the feedback. I will pass that along.
Thank you, Sam. Any comments or discussion on the Metro Common 2050 draft on housing and mobility recommendations? Okay.
I've not had a chance to look at it, so
all right.
I'm remiss.
So if anyone,
I'm working on my chapter.
Yeah. So if anyone does ever look at it, they can forward any comments to me. And I don't think we have any public comments.
Nobody?
I'm disappointed we're not popular.
Oh.
I know. We're a fun bunch.
I've always said with a name like Master Planned Committee, you would think that the people would see that on the website and be like, wow, I probably should watch that meeting.
Maybe we should change our name to the Global Plan Initiative or something.
I like it. I like to
Raise the stakes a little bit.
I was having a conversation with one of our, with an individual at the breakfast. And quite frankly, for an individual who probably should have known a little bit more about it, I don't think they understand what this master plan can and should do for the city.
Yeah.
I think they're really focused, they're down in the weeds dealing with individual issues. They're not dealing with the broader set of structural and future thinking issues here. And frankly, I think the Board of Selectmen has to be more informed about this. Except for you, Sam, present company accepted.
No, I agree. I think the Board of Selectmen has a key role in terms of making some of these things happen, motivating people to coalesce around certain initiatives. As I mentioned, the federal funding, I think we're going to be setting some priorities out of that as well. So, to me, getting some important things done over the next several years has got to come in substantial part from the Board of Selectmen as the ones who manage the budget process particularly.
Well, also at the same time, I mean, clearly some of the things we're talking about here, we're going to identify individual committees and boards within the town who should have some sort of driving responsibility to make things happen.
Yep.
And it should be the Board of Selectmen, I would think, would be the executive overview of what's happening, to constantly ask to make sure, in fact, there is a focus on what we are talking about here with respect to what the individual boards are doing.
Yep. I agree with you. Good point.
So I agree with you, Bill. And I think that's the reason why we have so many different entities represented on this committee. So everyone
Precisely.
can take the plan back to their entity and move those initiatives forward. But
it's not just the-
this is a planning board document, though.
Right.
It's owned by the planning board.
But at the same time, is the planning board going to be responsible, let's say, for trails or ADA or housing or any of the other committees in town? Are they going to be, is planning going to be the one who sets down on a regular basis and asks, hey, how's it going? What are you doing? Are you in fact pushing forward on priorities we talked about in the master plan? Is that what planning is going to do?
But it's really important, Bill, because it's talking about accountability for implementation, I think is what you're talking about.
Right.
Oh, yeah, sure. There's no question.
So the implementation will be part of this plan. We have
No question, but who makes, I mean, we have said before, and it's easy. I mean, I've certainly done it plenty of times with the people that I've managed. I've said, you're responsible. And after a few months, if I don't ask, hey, how's it going? Guess what? It'll never get done.
Correct. So that's why implementation will be part of this, and we'll figure out once the plan is put together how that process will work.
Mimi, I have a process question. So it's a planning board document. Does that mean the planning board has to formally adopt it at some
Yes.
point when we're done with it? So they have to vote on and approve it?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think the Board of Selectmen accepts it also.
Okay.
What comes first, Mimi? The planning board votes on it and and then it goes to board?
The planning board first, yeah, as the sponsor of the project.
Yeah, thank you.
But Bill, to your point, it's a good one, and clearly we are somewhat decentralized in terms of management and accountability with different elected boards in town. But I think that there's an opportunity here. The Board of Selectmen is actually going to, in theory, going to be having a planning meeting sometime later this summer, as we did last year. And last year, for the first time that I can recall, we actually came up with a one sheet of goals and we tracked them periodically to see how we were doing. And we got a reasonable number of them done. Not, in my view, quite as big picture goals as I would have liked, but at least it's a good structure. And so I think we're going to have an opportunity to do that again shortly. And my idea would be to include in that conversation things that are coming out of this project to get some visibility of things. And hopefully, I'd like to be able to get some priority setting conversation with this group before the selectmen do that, although the timing may not quite fit perfectly. But at least I plan to make the point that we ought to try to be coordinated with things that are coming out of the master plan committee and get them on the list for the Board of Selectmen to try to reinforce as well. Not that we, control all of what happens, but at least that's another push to create some momentum for some of these things that I think could be helpful.
I agree, Sam, and I don't want to belabor the point, but my understanding was the Board of Selectmen, independent of what we're doing here in this discussion, but I thought the Board of Selectmen was going to meet with all the appointed boards on some sort of regular basis, whatever that turns out to be, just to make sure they understood and what was going to be done, what they were doing. And subsequently, I thought that would be an excellent opportunity for them to discuss individual boards and committees' priorities, and subsequently to make sure, in fact, those priorities in some sense match what the master plan was going to be, so that at the end of some period of time, the Board of Selectmen could say, guess what? I understand as an executive, I've given you charge to execute various projects, various committees, and you have done it, and I've overseen what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. I thought that's where we were going.
And we actually did do that last year. We started that process and actually had conversations with maybe a half dozen various boards and committees, and then sort of got caught up in the budget process, and the whole pandemic and Zoom meetings thing created some difficulties there. So I think it's critical to get that back in gear, and I will certainly suggest that, because I think we learned a lot from talking with committees that we don't see that frequently, that are in many cases doing great work and need some more visibility. I will tell you, Bill, that one of the discoveries I've made is that that top-down leadership process doesn't work quite as well in the public sector as it does in my day job. I could do this kind of thing you described fairly easily, but that has not worked out so well for me in this particular job. But I think that's the way it should work, certainly. And I think we're doing a little better with some of that now, but we need to continue to push on it.
Right, but the board, the individuals, the boards are going to be, in essence, charged with responsibility for making sure things get done out of the master plan. I think that's where we're going on this eventually. And my concern is that the boards, without some sort of overview, are going to do the same thing we have always done here, which is get lost in the weeds, get down into the detail of various things, and not accomplish broader objectives.
And that's one of the reasons I've suggested that anything we can do to set a few priorities for people to focus that effort in ways that we haven't focused in the prior master plan process, I think that could be very helpful. And I guess I'd rather, get real accomplishment on 3 or 4 things than, baby steps on 25 things. Generally, that's just my own personal.
Tangible action items.
Well, that would be the board's decision, of course, but individual committees are we as individual representatives of committees are going to take back kind of assignments that come out of this sort of thing. And we're going to try to drive that as part of the committee process. At least I assume that's what we would individually intend to do.
Yep.
But an overview, some sort of executive overview saying, hey, you guys decided that was the #1 priority for your committee. How you doing?
Yeah,
that's an appropriate question that not only the Board of Selectmen should ask, but I would think that we would insist as a committee that the Board of Selectmen kind of provide that executive function, so to speak.
I agree.
We can ask, we can insist.
Yeah.
No, I understand where you're coming from here, but at the same time, I think it's important to ask pertinent questions, to make pertinent statements when we present this particular plan to the Board of Selectmen. I think we can set objectives for them to some extent, because guess what? They're public representatives just like we are. They have responsibilities. And the planning board basically said, guess what? I want a plan. And I want to know where individuals within this community believe things should be within some sort of 7 or 8 year time frame. The Board of Selectmen are representatives of committees of the community as a whole. And I would hope that they would want to also participate in this process of trying to make things happen over a 7 or 8 or 9 year period.
I agree, and I will continue to push for that as I can.
All right, thanks.
I think,
My rant's over.
No, I think your comments are really valid.
yes,
And we have to understand that the Board of Selectmen is fluid. They change. So
I hope not.
we all change. I mean, I would dare say that nobody here will be in the same position as we were 7 years prior. I mean, in my particular case, I'll be dead, but there will be other people who will probably move on to various other things.
I don't know, we've had someone that's been pretty consistent on the planning board.
That's right.
Since
Well,
the
I
80s.
understand. Yeah, congratulations. You've done an excellent job. Well, my point is,
Not me.
my point is nothing permanent. And that's the problem we have with a long-term plan, that nobody's permanent. And there may be a committee or an individual driving a committee who thinks, hey, you know, I really have responsibility for this, but guess what? In 7 years, when accountability is due, I'm going to be gone. No, that's not fair. But that's the way public service works.
That's the business, and you got to do the best you can to move forward consistently.
But that's why individual questions by the Board of Selectmen on a regular basis help set the priorities for these groups and committees.
I mean, I can speak, you know, I'm one of the members who, of the Conservation Commission who went, oh, sorry, it's getting darker and darker here, who went, you know, to the Board of Selectmen, and we did our little kind of Zoom update. And it was a very productive, I think, very welcome meeting. And, you know, there were questions that were asked that we had responses for, and there were a couple of things that we came out afterwards and went, actually, that's a really good thought. And we took it back and talked about it on the commission. So, you know, I think if there's the process is in place, as Bill suggests, that, you know, we present the plan, it's clearly sponsored by the planning board, which I think is really key to make sure everyone understands that. But if the Board of Selectmen, you know, can incorporate it into their process of checking in with the commissions, I mean, then it becomes business as usual. It's not something else that everyone has to worry about. Because I think that, you know, in my experience, that's what makes these sort of plans viable, is it just becomes how we do our stuff, you know?
Right.
Like you go to a meeting every 4 weeks, or, you know, I'll stick with the Conservation Commission. We go to a meeting every 3 weeks because that's what's in, you know, that's what the federal requirements are to have, you know, that frequency of meetings. And we have a standing agenda, and, you know, we add this to our standing agenda. Good conversation.
So I think I see that, Judith and Bill, as one of the challenges we have here. I think my objective would be how to institutionalize some of the key findings and priorities out of this process. So in fact, it gets wired into the sort of DNA, if you will, of the town government, volunteer committees, boards, et cetera, in various ways. So you need less of the individuals following up, but it sort of becomes somehow common lore or shared objectives or whatever, which you can't get too broadly, I'm sure. We couldn't do that for 47 different objectives. But if we could pick a few things and get people motivated and moving on them, you build some excitement around it, I think that creates a sort of self-perpetuating momentum out of the process. So I think it would be an interesting conversation once we see what our priorities are shaping up as to how do you actually wire that stuff into the fabric of town government in ways that don't need constant reinforcement, following up on, checking on, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe that's wishful thinking to think it can be done, but I think we could probably come up with some ideas in that direction.
Well, Sam, I would certainly welcome a conversation somewhere down the road when we have more concrete stuff to deal with here with respect to what we want to do and how we've set our priorities. I would welcome a further discussion on this. That's all I.
Approval of minutes? Did everyone get a chance to read the June 10th minutes?
Yep.
Yeah.
It misspelled my name. Other than that, it's perfect.
They misspelled Sam.
Left off the last S. I think it was line 119 or something like that. Minor type.
That means you
You-
weren't here.
Did you
take a look.
send it to, did you send it to Kate
I did
or should
not.
I? Oh, okay, I will.
Thanks. Major strategic change there. Could be mistaken for somebody else.
Yeah.
Kate is home tonight. She sends her best and will obviously watch the recording and do excellent minutes as always.
As always.
Perfect.
Thank you, Kate.
We miss her when she's not here. I miss her when she's not here.
So do I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended or any other edits on it? On
So
them?
moved.
So moved. I'll second it.
And a roll call vote, Signs,
Aye.
McKee,
Aye.
Stivers,
Aye.
Watson,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Markalier,
Aye.
Glazovitsky,
Aye.
Savidovich,
I wasn't present at the meeting, but the minutes looked okay. So can I say yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Connolly,
Mute.
Aye.
Warren,
Aye.
and Joyce.
Aye.
Very good.
How about Latrell?
Oh, and
Yeah.
Latrell, aye.
At least you answered this time.
All right, so the next thing I wanted to discuss was whether, so we have now the option of Zoom meetings, in-person meetings. And can we do a hybrid, Sam? It was,
We're working on that. The Southborough Access Media's equipment in the townhouse hearing room is broken apparently. And they're trying to get parts to either fix it or replace it. So you can actually have the normal, video streaming there. And Jay Montillo is our technology person, is also looking into possibly putting a video screen on the walls there, so you could actually have Zoom with people connected and being visible to people in the room, which would be not a bad hybrid model. But last I heard, they were still working on all that stuff, and so for the near term, at least, my guess is we're still either Zoom or
Don't we just need an LCD projector and a white wall? Which
we
we have.
do have a projector
There's
in
a
the ceiling
monitor
here
for the
for
guests.
slide.
But did the governor approve that? Or
But
did the government approve a hybrid model?
I think that's a possibility, but I'm not sure.
I
think-
thought it was.
Can
I
I
think
chime
it
in?
is.
Because we had a school committee meeting that was hybrid. And I will just say that, so I think it's been extended, the possibility of Zoom meetings has been extended through the end of the year, right? So you can do a hybrid. What's that?
April 22.
Yes. Then the
Oh, okay, okay. And it was functional. It was not what I think of at this point as the preferred way of doing things, just because the sound is, it was really hard for some of the people who were remote to hear everybody in the room, and Southborough Access Media did a fantastic job. They had their equipment, they set it all up, but I would say it added to the time of the meeting. It was just a lot of sort of stops and starts to kind of make sure that everything was working. So I'm just throwing that out there because, you know, I know we haven't done that in this group yet, but so it was doable, but it wasn't awesome.
Good to
I
know.
guess that's
Thank you.
what I would
I'll
say.
second that, Katura. The Board of Selectmen did interviews for legal services proposals.
Mhm.
And it was, again, we had people, connected remotely on that one, and it was not perfect, as you say, functional, but a little awkward.
Because of the sound?
Yeah, sound was not great, and there were echoes in various places, and so it was just technically.
It's also the way it was set for us anyway. We couldn't see the people who were on Zoom. So maybe if there were a screen where you could see them, that would be a little bit different. But there was, somebody had to sit there and monitor the screen where there was Zoom and say, oh, Joan has a comment, and and then Joan chimes in. But it was, it felt less like being there as a group than full Zoom does to me. Anyway, but so again, doable, but
I would love to keep the meetings full Zoom. I'm 6 months pregnant with 2 kids and a husband who's bi-coastal. So if we could keep them on Zoom, that would be excellent, but it's up to you guys. I'm here for whatever.
We have had quorum issues, certainly. So I think that's another consideration here.
Yeah, sure.
But do you think that we ever need to come together to like review the draft edit, or does it work for everybody
Have an in-person meeting.
on the shared screen?
Yeah, I would think so. I would think,
That might be helpful when we get to that point. Yeah.
yeah, I would think so.
Okay.
Not as like a regular thing, because like Eugene, I'm an advocate for the Zoom meetings because I'm not always here in Massachusetts when we meet. But I also, I facilitate blended sessions now for clients, and it's a matter of kind of having a good projector and having a good speaker, and it's not the same as everyone being in the same room, but it's doable if some people do want to meet face to face.
There is a fair amount of pressure on our technology guy to actually find a solution to make that work fairly quickly. There are a lot of people.
I'm curious what technology they're using, because I don't see it as overly technologically complicated.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But so
yeah.
Maybe we stick to Zoom for the next one and then see how that develops.
Okay. So that brings me to the next one we have on the calendar, July 28th. I will not be here then. No.
I will not be here then either.
But you'll not be here for the meeting in person or for a Zoom or in person?
Either. I'll be away with no internet access.
So you'd be on a family vacation.
Should we reschedule?
The 28th is hard for me as well.
Is that week
We
bad,
could.
Mimi, for you, or just to that day?
Who, me?
Mimi, yeah, is it week bad?
Yes. The week I'm gone.
Maybe the following week?
That's our family vacation. The 2 times a year, I have both my children in the same geographic location. So
Oh my heavens.
So let me throw this out. Should we maybe take a longer pause between till the next meeting? Because I mean, for example, I'm not going to be around first 2 weeks in August. So if we push it back, and I suspect that might be the problem with a number of people. So should we push it back? Should we? Because that was
Wednesday, September 1st.
Or third
I was
week in
actually-
August?
I was
So we
thinking
have-
August might be a difficult time for folks as well. I don't know that we'll get quorum.
I would support pushing it back if we have a very clear kind of set of action steps that need to happen between now and our next meeting. Like everybody needs to look at their chapter and insert the new fabulous data that Sarah has given, and maybe add photos and work with Judith and others around the edits. Like for nothing to happen between now and September worries me.
No, totally agree. Yeah, because we want to wrap this up. Do we anticipate this? I love the committee. Do we anticipate it going into 20? I love the committee.
Yeah.
How about the week of August 16th? Are people away that week as well? I'm a little nervous about getting too extended out there.
I'll be in Vermont that week, but I will have internet access that week. of August 16th.
Does August the 18th, like, does that not work for anybody? Bill, you said that doesn't work for you.
That works for me.
Works for me.
It works for me now, but I am planning some stuff, so I can't guarantee it, but I will try to be here if I'm here.
I'm reluctant to take too long a break, so that's 6 weeks here.
That's a good compromise, Sam.
August 18th.
So in terms of I think Karen makes a good point now in terms of making sure that we're all clear about what the actions are. I mean, I'm definitely able to start working on my gap analysis in the next few days. So what I would say to people is, I'll do whatever. I mean, first of all, we need everyone's current version, because otherwise we're going to get in a mighty tricky mess with version control. So I agree, Karen, that we've got to get the data in there, and I would personally hold on photos right now, because as soon as you start putting photos into these documents, it's going to be real. I mean, the sizes are going to get huge. So, and so in terms of, just managing them, I'd say if you can't get your data sets into your document in the next week, just hold for now and let us get started on the editing. If you can get your data in there, that's great. But leave, just put a placeholder for photos for now. I mean, you could pull out a file of photos and, stick them in the shared drive so we know which ones you want to put in there. But
and getting the data in, it's just a matter of taking what Sarah has done and copying and pasting it into the document, right?
Yeah.
Should all be able to do that.
Yeah.
Should.
Copy, paste. I mean, the formatting is a disaster on my chapter, so the formatting needs to get cleaned up. But we think that the consultants are doing that. So.
Okay. So Judith, data, we have a week to do that.
A week,
or hold off. Anything else that we should be doing
then,
between now and August?
Sarah, Julie, Sarah and I'll kind of coordinate outside in terms of, so for example, I know that Karen's version is, or her document is there and ready to start looking at. So I will probably start with hers because I'm also pretty familiar with it. And then it's just a question of, if we send you out questions or, items for follow-up, if people can do those on a timely basis, that would be great.
So you guys will reach out to us with any questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
And vice versa.
All right.
Yeah.
And in the next meeting, we want via Zoom? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another process thing that I think we talked about before, but I'll just bring up now, is that as we're doing the editing and we're getting into the final version, we're now 4, 8, 12, 13 people, and we started as 22 people. So this committee was originally created with one representative from each of the committees, and we don't have that anymore. So do we need, as a process step, to go back to the committees that are no longer represented in our little core group and just say, hey, does this look okay? Or is that not necessary?
I mean, I thought everyone is.
Originally like 24 and now we're 13. I just wasn't sure if that meant that there were some committees not represented.
But that's because some people are not, they're on the committee, they're just not in the meeting. So for example, Lisa isn't attending the meeting. Andrew Mills is on the committee but doesn't attend the meetings.
But are they looking at the master plan, I guess? Are they looking at what we came up with if they're not attending the meetings?
Not clear. Yeah.
I just bring it up as a kind of like stakeholder analysis of like our final product. Does it really represent all the people that were originally going to give input? That
I mean, I have okay. So let me make a note. I have a mapping, one of my little processy mapping documents that takes
Love those
on
documents.
the committee, I suppose like the team mapping thing, that takes the sections, and I think it's done by section or it's done by goals. Anyway, it takes the chapters and says which people and committees should be
Oh, cool. All right.
doing and doing that
That's a great way to.
out to everyone. And if you've got comments on that, we can, I can take that. I mean, I think
Overthinking it. I just would hate for us to publish something and then have people
no,
say,
no, no, absolutely. I think we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only, we don't have a rep from historic, but Kate has been updating.
Been our liaison now, and I think her committee seems very comfortable in using her as the point person, because I've seen emails from her committee members back to her with feedback on the recommendations.
that's great. That's great. I'm feeling better already.
And then
lost
there
our
were
zoning
two at-large positions that we culled. So those aren't representing any particular entity. And then the ZBA is the only one that really is not represented.
To Karen's point, I think it's actually worth taking a spin through the committee list off the town website and just trying to see, are there groups there that we do want to reach out to, and at least send an invitation to say, here's what we're doing. Generally, be glad to talk with you, and deputize one or two people to go talk to some of those folks and communicate at least that this is what is going on.
I'm not saying that they're going to have huge revisions, but even if we just send them a link and say, here's what we're planning on publishing.
Yep.
Open to your thoughts. At least we're like crossing our I's and dotting our T's if anybody comes back to us a year from now and says, you never took my point of view into consideration.
Really good idea.
You know they don't say that whatever we do.
Okay, so that's
But at the same time, we'll be issuing responsibilities to these people. I suppose we should tell them beforehand that they're responsible for various things.
Or just surprise them.
Oh, well, whatever. That's always nice.
So the mapping document that I spoke about, that's how I generated it. I went through every
That sounds perfect, Ruth. Yeah, that sounds great.
town website and said, here they are, and here's which chapters are likely to be relevant for them. So let me get that out in the morning to everybody, and then we'll use that as a starting point. And yet then I think, once we get to the first, the editing version with the data in it, I think that's a great next step. And yes, we can, I think my mapping document maybe even assigns people from the committee as to which committees they should be reaching out to.
Perfect. Yes.
Maybe in parallel, it is a little early, as somebody suggested, but if anybody has any great pictures, local pictures of things, maybe just start collecting some of those.
Right.
And
In a folder on the hard drive.
not worrying about, where it might fit or not. Maybe send those to Judith or Sarah to have a collection point to people.
Or you can put them, I'll make a pictures file on the Google
Okay.
Drive.
Even better. And so again, we will probably wind up with more than we use, but that'd be a great way if people have one that they run across and say, wow, this is a great local scene kind of thing.
And when the consultants do the page maker or whatever program you're using, layout of it all, they can have those pictures in their original form, which they usually want that anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So contributions welcome. That's good.
So all butts and blurred faces, is that what the
That's correct.
parameters are?
Especially at the nude beach.
Only illegal acts are
That's
qualified here.
that's not an image I can live with.
All right, anything else? So do I have a
Meeting, do we decide on the
August 18th Zoom?
18th?
Yes, I believe so.
I think I might have a problem with that. I'll let you know, Mimi. I'll have to look at mine. where I am.
So we'll keep that at that for now, and you'll
Yeah.
let me know, Judith.
I'll let you know.
I'm good anytime that week, actually, so,
Okay, I
other
think,
other than Tuesday, probably, just to be safe. 17th.
yeah, I'm good that week too. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn
So move.
and a second?
I'll second it.
Very good. And a roll call, Signs.
Aye.
McKee,
Yes.
Stivers,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Markelier,
Yes.
Savidovich,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Glazemitsky,
Yes.
Connolly,
Yes.
and Meknowskis.
Yes.
Very good. And welcome, Joyce. Nice to see you here.
Thank you.
Hope everybody has a
So-
great and safe 4th holiday. Watch the fireworks. Going to be interesting.
Yeah.
So